You've felt this before. You just didn't have the words for it. That quiet, almost unsettling thought that shows up when everything around you goes silent. When you look at the sky a little too long, or when you're lying in bed at night and your mind refuses to settle. It's not fear exactly. It's something deeper, a kind of pressure, like your mind is brushing against a boundary it was never designed to understand. You tell yourself the universe is everything. That's what you've always heard. Everything that exists inside it. But something in you resists that idea. Because if the universe is everything, then what is it inside of? And why does your mind refuse to accept nothing as an answer? That discomfort you feel right now? It's not confusion. It's something more honest than that. It's your mind realizing that the story you've been given might be incomplete. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You've probably been told that asking what exists outside the universe is like asking what's north of the North Pole, that it's a meaningless question, that outside doesn't exist. But notice how quickly that explanation shuts you down. It doesn't satisfy you, it silences you, because deep down, your curiosity isn't just intellectual, it's emotional, it's existential. You're not just asking about space, you're asking about your place in reality, and that's where things start to shift, because when physicists talk about the universe, they don't always mean what you think they mean. The word universe sounds absolute, total, final. But in modern physics, especially in fields like cosmology and quantum theory, the definition is softer, stranger. The universe might not be everything. It might just be everything we can access, everything we can observe, everything bound by the same physical laws we experience. And if that's true, then the question changes. It's no longer what's outside everything. It becomes what exists beyond what we can perceive. And suddenly, your question isn't meaningless anymore. It's just uncomfortable. Because it forces you to confront something you've avoided your entire life. The idea that reality might be bigger than your ability to understand it. Think about that for a second. Your brain evolved to help you survive. Not to comprehend infinity. Not to grasp the full structure of existence. It filters reality, simplifies it, shrinks it into something manageable. So when you try to imagine outside the universe, you run into a wall. Not because nothing is there, but because your mind doesn't have the tools to visualize it. And instead of recognizing that limitation, most people conclude that nothing exists. But that's not logic. That's discomfort disguised as certainty. Physics doesn't actually say there's nothing outside the universe. In fact, some of its most serious theories suggest the opposite. One idea is the multiverse, not in the way movies show it, not alternate versions of you making different choices, something far less comforting. Imagine reality as a vast structure, where what you call your universe is just one region among many, each with its own laws, its own constants, its own version of physics, not connected, not accessible, just there. Like bubbles in an infinite ocean. You exist in one bubble, but the ocean doesn't end with you. And here's where it gets unsettling. You will never see beyond your bubble, no matter how advanced technology becomes, no matter how far you travel. There is a boundary, not a wall, but a limit, a horizon beyond which information cannot reach you. So when you ask what exists outside the universe, you're asking about something fundamentally unreachable, and that does something to you emotionally. It creates a kind of quiet frustration. Because as a human, you crave closure. You want answers that complete the picture. But reality doesn't owe you that. And maybe that's the part that feels hardest to accept. You've spent your entire life believing that if you just learn enough, think deeply enough, question hard enough, you'll eventually understand everything. But what if understanding everything isn't possible? What if the structure of reality itself is larger than your capacity to fully grasp it? Not because you're not intelligent enough, but because you're human. There's a difference, and you can feel that difference right now. That slight tension in your thoughts, that quiet resistance. Because a part of you doesn't want to accept limits. You want reality to be explainable, containable, safe. But the truth is, the deeper physics goes, the less safe it feels. Take the concept of space itself. You think of space as a container, a place where things exist. But physics doesn't really support that. Space isn't something things sit inside. It's something that expands, it stretches, it evolves, which means the universe isn't expanding into something. It's just expanding. And that breaks your intuition, because your mind needs an outside. It wants a background, a larger space. But physics suggests there may not be one in the way you imagine. And still, that doesn't mean nothing exists beyond it. It just means beyond might not look like a place at all. It might not have direction. It might not have time. It might not even follow the concept of existence the way you understand it. Now pause for a moment. Notice how your mind reacts to that. It tries to reject it, or simplify it, or turn it into something familiar, because uncertainty is uncomfortable. But that discomfort is where real insight begins, because this isn't just about physics. This is about how you deal with the unknown. Think about your own life. How often do you need clear answers to feel at ease? How often do you struggle when things don't make sense? When relationships feel uncertain? When your future isn't clearly defined? When you don't know what's coming next? You experience the same tension, the same need for closure, and just like with the universe, you try to fill the gaps. You create explanations, stories, certainties that help you feel grounded, even if they're incomplete, even if they're not entirely true. Because the alternative feels like losing control. And that's what this question really touches. Control. When you ask what exists outside the universe, you're not just exploring reality. You're confronting the possibility that reality isn't fully accessible to you, that there are limits, not just in space, but in understanding. And for most people, that realization triggers something deeper, a quiet fear, not of what's out there, but of not being able to know it, because knowledge feels like control, and control feels like safety. So when you reach a question that can't be fully answered, it feels like the ground beneath you shifts. But here's something most people never notice. That feeling, that uncertainty, it's not a weakness. It's a doorway. Because the moment you stop demanding that reality be fully understandable, you start seeing it more clearly, not as something you need to conquer, but as something you can experience. And right now, you're standing at that edge, between needing answers and learning to exist without them. And what comes next changes how you see everything. Because the question isn't just what exists outside the universe. It's whether you actually need to know, or if something deeper is happening here, something that has less to do with space and more to do with you. And that's where this begins to turn in a direction you didn't expect. Because the moment you stop asking what's out there in a purely physical sense, something shifts. The question becomes quieter, more personal, more honest. What is it about the unknown that unsettles you so deeply? Why does the idea of something existing beyond your reach feel almost threatening? It's not because of space. It's because of certainty. You've built your sense of reality on the belief that eventually things can be understood, that with enough time, enough intelligence, enough effort, the unknown becomes known. But the concept of outside the universe challenges that belief at its core. It introduces a possibility you're not used to accepting, that some things may always remain beyond you, not temporarily, but permanently, and your mind resists that, not because it's wrong, but because it's trying to protect you. You see, your brain doesn't just process information. It manages your sense of stability, and uncertainty, especially infinite, unresolvable uncertainty, feels like instability. So what does your mind do? It simplifies. It tells you the question is meaningless, or that there's nothing beyond, or that it doesn't matter. But notice how none of those answers actually satisfy you. They just quiet the discomfort, temporarily, because the deeper part of you still knows. There's more, not necessarily more that you can see or measure, but more than your current understanding can hold. And instead of seeing that as a problem, what if it's an invitation? Think about it this way. If the universe truly has no outside in the way you imagine, it doesn't mean existence ends. It means your model of existence is limited. And that's not failure, that's perspective. Even in physics, the most advanced theories don't claim to fully explain reality. They approximate it. They describe patterns. They create frameworks that work until they don't. And when they stop working, they're replaced, refined, expanded. So the idea that there could be something beyond your universe, something not bound by space, time, or even the rules you rely on, isn't absurd. It's consistent with how knowledge evolves. But here's the deeper layer most people miss. This isn't just about the structure of reality. It's about your relationship with it. Because the way you respond to the unknown in physics is the same way you respond to the unknown in your own life. Do you panic when you don't have answers? Do you rush to conclusions just to feel stable? Do you avoid questions that make you uncomfortable? Or do you stay with them, sit inside the uncertainty, without needing to escape it? That ability is rare, but it changes everything. Because when you stop demanding certainty from reality, you stop forcing yourself into false clarity. You become more honest, more grounded, more present. And ironically, that's when understanding deepens. Not because you've solved everything, but because you've stopped pretending that you need to. So what exists outside the universe? The honest answer is, we don't fully know. And that's not a failure of science. It's a reflection of reality's depth. There are theories, possibilities, mathematical frameworks that suggest structures beyond what we can observe. But none of them give you a complete, final answer. And maybe they're not supposed to. Because this question isn't just about finding an endpoint. It's about recognizing that there might not be one. That existence might not be a closed system with clear boundaries. It might be something far more open, far more layered, far more infinite. And instead of that making your life smaller, it can make it richer. Because when you accept that reality is bigger than your understanding, you also realize something else. Your experience still matters. Your thoughts, your emotions, your awareness, they exist within this vast, unknown structure. And they're real, right now. You don't need to know what's outside the universe to exist meaningfully inside it. You don't need to solve every mystery to live fully. In fact, the need to solve everything often pulls you away from actually experiencing anything, and maybe that's the quiet shift happening here. You started with a question about space, about what lies beyond, but what you're really confronting is your relationship with not knowing, and if you can sit with that, if you can allow uncertainty without rushing to escape it, something changes. You become less controlled by fear, less dependent on answers, more open, more steady, more aware. Because you're no longer trying to force reality into something smaller than it is. You're allowing it to be vast. And in that vastness, you don't disappear. You expand. So maybe the real answer isn't a location, not a place outside the universe, but a shift in how you see it and how you see yourself within it. You are part of something you may never fully understand, and that's not a limitation. That's what makes existence profound. So the next time that quiet question appears in your mind, what exists outside the universe? Don't rush to silence it. Stay with it. Let it open something in you instead of closing it. Because the goal was never just to find an answer. It was to see what the question reveals about you. And once you see that clearly, you realize something important. You're not lost in the unknown. You're living inside it. And that's not something to fear. It's something to finally understand and trust.